Hello, and welcome back to my video series on how to use Google SketchUp. In today's video, we'll learn how to name and save files, the general layout of the program, how to use the orbit, pan, and zoom tools, and then also how to use the standard projection views.
Picking up where we last left off, this is the basic interface right here for the Google SketchUp program. And immediately when we open it up, there's a couple things that we want to do. The first thing is we definitely want to give a name to the project. So you can just double click that button up there and then you can give this a name. Let's say this is just lesson number 3 for right now. So once it's saved, it'll change from saving and now it's saved, so you're good to go. And then the next thing that we're going to do is just talk about the layout of the SketchUp program. So just like with 3D models, so this is something that I 3D printed using first modeling it in SketchUp and then 3D printing it. Every object that we interact with in our world really has 3 dimensions that we kind of interact with. There is the height of an object, the width of an object, and then the length of an object. And those are the 3 dimensions. And just like how it has 3 dimensions, over in our SketchUp program, there's also 3 axes that we can work off, which represents one of those dimensions. So we have the height, which is this blue line right here. The width, let's say, is the red line, and then the length is this green line right here. And that kind of makes the 3D object. So whenever we're working with models in SketchUp, we basically use those 3 axes to basically give shape to the object. So the other thing that we want to know first off by getting familiar with is basically how to just move around in the space. So that's in the far left hand column, there's a set of different tools that we can use, and the one that we want is all the way at the bottom, which is going to just say orbit for right here for right now. So this tool, if we select it, we can see there's actually a little pop-out menu. It comes with 5 other different tools right here. So the first one is orbit, next one is pan, and next one is zoom, followed by a zoom window, and then zoom extents. So for our purposes for right now, we're just going to talk about the first 3 ones. So we'll click orbit right here, and then we get this little new icon. No longer is our mouse a little arrow clicker, but it's now this green and red little shape tool. What this does, it allows us to kind of move around our 3D space. So now if this is a person right here, we can see that as we rotate around, they basically change along the different background right there. And then we can kind of orbit around using our trackpad. So what we can do is just press the left mouse button and then just kind of move around the trackpad, and we can orbit around a central point. In this case, our fixed point is this point where all 3 of those axes meet together. That's known as the origin. Or if it's kind of like a graph, it's at the 0, 0 point, but in this case it's 3 dimensions, 0, 0, 0. So we can orbit around this fixed point right here. The next tool is, if we go back over here to change it, we can click the orbit button at the very bottom, and then we can select this little hand one, which is panning. And what this does, it allows us to move back and forth while keeping that same orbit fixed location. So if you remember when we were orbiting around, when we moved around, we were able to see that blue horizon as the sky, but now we can't really see it. We're stuck at like a fixed camera point, but we can move left, right, up, and down in that sense. And I'm using it the same way as I did the orbit button, where I'm clicking the left mouse button and then just moving around on the trackpad to move around from left to right. The last one that we'll talk about is zoom. And for right now, you can go ahead and go back to that bottom tool and then select zoom, just like so. And then what we can do is we can, again, hold the left mouse button and then kind of move back and forth, and then we can zoom in and out. And that allows us to get to smaller features on the our 3D objects. But an even easier way to do that is if you do have a trackpad, even without selecting the zoom button. So let's go back to the orbit button. You can zoom in and out by just pinching in and out, kind of like what you would do on a smartphone or an iPad or some sort of tablet. So if you pinch inwards, the object gets small, and if you zoom inwards, the object gets big. And then using those buttons, these tools, you can kind of basically position your 3D space, your 3D environment, however way you like. So we can look like so, look underneath to sky, and then we can kind of pan back and forth. So if you get comfortable trying to play around with those using the buttons, those different tools and the trackpad, and then get kind of comfortable learning how to use those tools. The other thing that we're going to talk about next is kind of these standard oriented views. So sometimes when you're working with 3D space, it's very easy to kind of get lost or confused or on like what kind of viewpoint that you have on a certain object. So there's kind of these standard viewpoints that you can automatically snap back towards. So the way we want to do is now we want to go over to the right hand side of the screen, and we can see there's a few columns here, a column of different tools. The one that we want to go to is the one that says views, so it's the fourth one up from the bottom. So you go ahead and select that, and it gives you these little pictures of houses right here. And you can see if we just click this top left one right here, it'll automatically zoom the camera to that standard view. So now we're given to this view right here, kind of looking at it again as like a 3D perspective. But then we can also get standard view. So for this example, if we want to look at the person from the top, we go to this middle one right here, and then we're looking at them from the top. This would be the case as if you had like a 2D graph, like your normal graph that you're maybe familiar with in math class. So this would be similar to the x-axis and then the y-axis. And then what we're doing is that person that was there, we're looking at them from the top of their head looking downwards. So that's why they look like just a line right here. And then there's other 3D views that you can kind of experiment with. This one button right here basically puts it into a parallel perspective mode or an isometric mode, which basically means that it gives equal proportions to all the angles right there. So again, these are tools just to help us get coordinated in certain ways so that we can effectively model our any 3D objects and kind of give us reference points. So using a combination of these standard projection views as well as the orbit, zoom, and pan tools allow us to kind of manipulate the 3D space so we can make models in an effective manner. So we can see from there that if we do want to get rid of the menu, you can just hit the X button right here and it'll go away. So in the next video, we'll kind of start talking about some of the other tools that are available with us and start going ahead and drawing things.